Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to be taking a look at Doctor Strange and how much better he is with his new uniform and how it compares to the old one, as well as also seeing how his artifact will help him in both PvE and PvP. If the video doesn't get too long, I'll probably include Wanda in it as well to compare the same things as I do with Doctor Strange, but also to kind of get an idea of how those two characters also compare to one another. If you don't really have time to watch the videos and just want a quick heads up on how the characters perform, Doctor Strange seems really good in PvE and less so in PvP, due to some issues with the artifact, which I'll discuss later. Wanda seems to be at about the same level of Doctor Strange, but from my testing, it seemed like she was a little bit behind Doctor Strange's performance. In terms of PvE, Wong then follows after those two and is actually pretty good as a standalone character, even though he has support buffs, and is actually pretty decent in PvP, though he isn't as great as I expected him to be. Then finally, Chavez seems to come in last in terms of the PvE comparisons, but in terms of the PvP comparisons, she is a powerhouse and is clearly first in that comparison. Anyways, getting right into it, with the old uniform and a CTP of authority, which I use across all of my testing for Doctor Strange, I was able to clear a stage 99 of Thanos with a minute and 48 seconds remaining. Versus Cull Obsidian and having the benefit of all defense down from the ultimate applying, as well as the constant time freeze being active, I was able to complete it with 3 minutes and 49 seconds remaining. The obvious change with his new uniform is that the spamming playstyle is now replaced. The 5th skill no longer resets your cooldowns and puts them down to 1 second, and in its stead, the 5th skill now acts sort of like Captain Marvel's previous uniform, the Hero one, where it augments your skills 1 through 4. After doing a bit of hit counting, it seems like the 5th skill now adds about 10 hits to every skill. So as long as that big AoE aura is still up and you're within range of it, you should be able to get at least 40 additional hits across all 4 skills. The way those additional hits are represented are through Doctor Strange creating illusions that cast the same skill. In terms of build options for PvE, you really only have 2, which is either a CTP of energy or a CTP of rage. If you really wanted to, you could also try a destruction, though it would have to be at least the mighty version to give you that extra damage to bosses and the ignore dodge. Using just a regular CTP of destruction is basically like an obelisk, because Doctor Strange has 100% to penetrate all sources with the exclusion of invincible, and because that value is higher than the 30% that you get from destruction, the 30% penetration from destruction will never be active. If you're wondering which is better, a CTP of energy or rage, I couldn't really tell you because I haven't tested it, but due to the fact that he gets so many additional hits from his 5th skill, kind of augmentation skill, I would kind of lean towards the energy being better at a higher level, but the CTP of Rage will make it much easier to play him since you have additional skills that also do a lot of damage. On top of the fact that you have to delay cancel his ultimate skill and you can't instant cancel it. But from what I've tested and heard, it seems like he is really proc friendly, considering that you basically just delay cancel his 5th skill and then everything else can essentially be instant cancelled. If you were skeptical that the reset playstyle was better, you can already see that with the new uniform I'm about a minute and 38 seconds faster than with the old uniform. That same improvement can be seen in the Cull Obsidian stage, because even though he lost that reset playstyle, he can still cast his skills fast enough to basically perma-lock down the opponent, and because he deals so much damage now, it doesn't even really matter because he'll take out the opponent very quickly. I had a 41-second improvement on this stage, and the reason for that is because I basically cleared it in 30 seconds. Some players worried that you couldn't spam the ultimate ability in the World Boss Ultimate stages to get that all defense down, but because the 5th skill has 30 seconds cooldown on it, the amount of meter that gives you for your ultimate is actually a lot more than it was previously, meaning that you can hit that ultimate ability pretty consistently, or almost as much as you could with the spamming playstyle. To give you a better idea of the raw damage that the uniform provides you with, and how much superior the new playstyle is to the spamming playstyle of the past, with the old uniform in a stage 9 of Knull and using only Chavez's damage leadership, no other supports, I was able to complete the fight with 46 seconds remaining. With the new uniform, I'm able to complete it in 2 minutes and 48 seconds, which is a full 2-minute improvement, and considering the fact that I almost completed it with 3 minutes remaining gives you an idea of just how powerful the character is, since characters on my account with no damage proc that can reach that 3 minutes remaining mark basically are ones that are at the highest level of PvE performance. So comparatively, that would be characters sort of like Makari and Moonstone. In terms of the skill rotation, if you're running a single skill damage proc like an energy, you open with the 5th skill, which you then delay cancel after the aura appears, use your 1st skill and instantly cancel it into the 4th skill, which you then cancel into the 3rd skill. You can use your 2nd skill as filler till the other skills are back off cooldown, though you'll probably have to go into another rotation with the 1 cancel 4 cancel 3 before your 5th skill is back up. Integrating the ultimate skill into this rotation is a little bit trickier because you have to delay cancel the ultimate skill. So you likely have to use the 6th skill as your damage proc is ending, so that the main damage from it can coincide with the damage proc and the main part of the rotation. So basically, you would activate your ultimate skill when you have about 2 seconds left on your damage proc, and then go back into the rotation that I mentioned. With a CTP of Rage, the rotation that I tried was a little bit different. I basically did 5, delay cancel 4, cancel 3, and then I did 1, cancel 2. By doing this rotation, I could almost fit in 2 full rotations with the 5th skill still active, and once you have your ultimate ability, you can use the 6th skill first and then still do this rotation, and everything should be able to fit in that 5-second window of the damage proc. Anyways, you can see from this clip that Doctor Strange got a really powerful upgrade for PvE, since I was able to do a stage 24 with nearly 1 minute remaining and no damage proc. To give you even more insight into his upgrade, I took him into a squad battle, and even though I have a really high point modifier since I have all the characters transcended in T3, and I also have 22% pierce on my cards, I was able to score 9 million points, which comparatively, if you saw my Green Goblin video, I was able to score around the same with him, but for him I have a damage proc, and again for Doctor Strange I have no damage proc at all. This means that if I was running something like a CTP of Rage, I should be able to easily hit 10 million, if not something like 11 million. Because Pierce largely doesn't work in stuff like Alliance Battle Extreme, I can't really say what he would score there, but my guess would be somewhere between the 8 and 8.5 million range with no damage proc, meaning that with a damage proc he should be able to easily score past 10 million, if not way more. Also, for those wondering if the new uniform is a nerf in timeline survival, where you really depend on the ultimate, it kind of isn't, because the meter fills up so quickly due to that high cooldown from the 5th skill. For those that aren't really too interested in PvE and want to see if the character has gotten much better in PvP, the short answer is that he kind of didn't, but his burst damage is much higher now, so he is capable of basically one-shotting sort of top meta characters. The only issue is that his survival isn't any better, and he doesn't really survive versus characters that either are very tanky or ones that have multiple lives or that immortality effect from the artifacts. One of the good things with the new uniform is that the AI is much better now. With the old uniform, the 5th skill, setting all of these skills to 1 second, was very problematic for the AI because it would usually just repeat the same skills, and those would often be the weak ones, like the 1st and 3rd skill, I would say. With the latest uniform, now the AI prioritizes the 5th skill first, which is perfect because it powers up all of his other skills, and because the cooldown is varying between those skills, he will cycle through a lot of them. But one glaring downside is that because the iframe ignore is removed from the second skill and substituted on the artifact, he won't really activate that skill as often as he did previously, meaning that you won't get too much benefit from the heal or the reflect that comes with that skill. Despite that, his overall performance is much better with the new uniform, so that doesn't really matter too much. In terms of PvP options, he doesn't really need a damage proc since his base damage and burst damage is so good. The one thing that he's lacking is survival, so with that, you could either go with a CTP of Authority, which is what I'm using, but I'm not really too satisfied with it, so I'm thinking of going with a CTP of Regen because his base HP is very high, and because the penetration from a regen, if you can go with a mighty option, does allow for him to knock the opponent out of their iframes or skills, which gives him more chance to deal damage. As you can see from this clip and previous clips, he struggles versus characters with iframe ignore, which is why I tested without it for all of these clips up to the next one, which I actually tested with the artifact, but there is a big problem with the current artifact. The issue with it is that it just doesn't work. It doesn't proc ever in PvP. I tested for over 30 minutes of timeline tests and I couldn't get it to proc once. This is for a 4-star version of it, which has 10% chance to activate when you time freeze, which is also a 75% chance of activating when you attack. So that means it's even less than a 10% chance to work. However, that's only part of the issue, since with other artifacts and CTPs, you usually have a pretty low activation rate as well for them, which is anywhere from 10% or a little bit higher to 15% maybe, but that is 10% or 15% for every hit. And most skills have, or rotations I would say, can go up to 50 hits or more, which is the reason why CTPs, for example, proc almost every time that you activate your skills 1 through 5. So even though that is about a 10 to 15% hit chance, it basically goes up to a 50% hit chance when you factor in all the instances of hits that occur, which ties back to why this artifact is essentially broken and useless, because you only have one instance of time freeze that occurs, and this is usually every 7 seconds. And to add to that, like I mentioned before, it's even less than 10% for a 4-star artifact version, since it's 10% of 75% that occurs every 7 seconds. To actually see if the artifact was broken and not working at all, I even went into World Boss Legend, and during the course of 3 minutes, I only got it to activate 3 times, which is basically once every minute. So speaking very plainly, I would say avoid this artifact at all costs, and the devs should definitely focus on changing this unless they have some other grand scheme in mind to make the proc actually usable. As it currently stands, the artifact is basically the worst in the game, since it never activates and has no use whatsoever. The artifact definitely needs to be fixed and addressed by the devs to either work on the percentage of hits that are dealt, like all other artifacts and CTPs, or to be changed to a 100% chance of activating when you time freeze, since the time freeze is a 75% chance of occurring every few seconds, meaning that the proc chance is basically locked at 75% chance. It's unfortunate to say that without this iframe ignore in his kit, he basically doesn't stand a chance of taking out characters that have a lot of iframe, have 2 lives, or have the immortal effect. It's really disappointing to think a character like Doctor Strange can't really hold his own in PvP, considering the new additions like Chavez are an absolute powerhouse in PvP. The first match that I took her into timeline versus my own team, she basically decimated my Thanos, Doom, and made quick work of Spider-Man like he didn't even have iframes. That's just a teaser of my PvP testing for Chavez, in case people want to build a PvP character right away to test an Alliance Conquest. That pretty much summarizes my testing for Doctor Strange. I was going to include Wanda in the same video for comparison, but it would have gotten too long, so I'm going to cut it off here and include it in the next video, which hopefully should also arrive within the day. One final note that I forgot to mention earlier in the video is that Now that Doctor Strange has his spamming removed, the second skill kind of suffers because previously you could spam that as much as you want to get up to 10% healing back every time you activated it. But now that you have a longer cooldown on it, you basically have very, very limited healing on the skill and his kit, meaning that he is a lot easier to die in content like World Boss Legend. I kind of hoped that the devs would realize this when they changed his playstyle, but unfortunately that's not the case. Considering how good Doctor Strange's improvement with the new uniform is, I'm not really holding my breath too much that the devs will address the healing and make it better, though I kind of hope that with the mid-month they bump up the healing to at least 20% and actually fix the artifact, which I kind of think they absolutely need to, since it doesn't work at all. That wraps up this one. Let me know what you think about Doctor Strange's new uniform. Are you happy with the new playstyle, or would you have preferred that it stayed how it was, where you could constantly spam? If you like the content, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the video. As always, thank you for your time and watching, but the video is now over.